What happens when one of Hollywood's most intense actors collides with a morning show host who thinks he can play hardball? You're about to witness one of the most explosive interviews ever captured on live television, and believe me, you won't forget it. Before we dive into this explosive showdown, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me if Tom Hardy was out of line or if George Stephanopoulos pushed too far. Because trust me, once you see how this glossy morning interview spiraled into a full-blown studio meltdown, you're going to have some strong opinions. Now, let's get back to the video. From the moment Tom Hardy walked onto the set of Good Morning America, there was a spark in the air. Dressed in a plain black jacket, sitting with that familiar intensity written all over his face, Hardy wasn't there to play dress-up or deliver fluffy sound bites. He was there to promote his film, but it became obvious almost immediately that George Stephanopoulos had other plans, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. George opened with that well-polished morning show charm, flashing a smile as bright as the studio lights. Tom, thanks for joining us this morning. Your new film is getting incredible reviews, but I want to talk about something else first. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. Hardy's jaw tightened, his body language stiffened, and the silent message was clear. This was not going to be the easy conversation George thought it would be. Hardy replied calmly, but there was already a hint of warning in his tone. Sure, George. What's on your mind? It was the kind of response that sounded polite on the surface, but if you knew Hardy, you could already hear the edge beneath the words. George leaned in, convinced he was steering the show. Well, there's been some controversy surrounding your comments about method acting and mental health. Some critics are saying you've been irresponsible in how you approach your craft. The words hung in the air like a bomb about to go off. The camera zoomed in, catching Hardy's piercing stare, his eyes narrowing as he processed the ambush. This wasn't the discussion he'd been promised. This wasn't promotion. It was a trap. Irresponsible? Hardy repeated, his voice soft but sharp enough to cut glass. That's an interesting word choice, George. Care to elaborate? George puffed up, thinking he had Hardy cornered. Several mental health advocates have criticized your interviews where you discuss diving deep into dark psychological spaces for your roles. They say you're glamorizing dangerous behavior. Hardy leaned back slightly, his Birmingham accent coming through a little stronger, a telltale sign that the temperature in the room was rising. And you agree with them? He asked coldly, firing the question back across the table like a bullet. But George doubled down, clutching the cards he thought would win him the moment. I'm asking the questions here, Tom. What do you say to parents who might be concerned about young actors following your example? And that was it. The exact line that detonated the calm. Hardy locked eyes with George, holding his gaze for what felt like forever on live television. The studio audience leaned in, sensing the powder keg about to explode. Parents should be concerned, Hardy finally said, his voice carrying the kind of weight that makes every word feel dangerous, about morning show hosts who do zero research before ambushing their guests with loaded questions based on second-hand gossip. Gasps rippled through the room. George's confident smile faltered just enough to reveal the cracks, but he pressed on, desperate to keep control. Tom, I don't think that's fair. We're just trying to have an honest conversation. Hardy leaned forward, letting out a laugh, short, sharp, and absolutely joyless. Honest? George, mate, if you wanted honesty, you would have told my publicist you planned to bring this up. You would have done your homework. You'd have real research, not whatever's written on your teleprompter. But that's not what this is it? The audience was silent, hanging on every syllable. The tension was unbearable, and yet the fireworks had only just begun. George tried to steady himself, adjusting his papers as if shuffling the notes could give him back control. I think our viewers deserve to hear your response to these legitimate concerns. Hardy's glare sharpened, his voice steady but with that unmistakable storm building underneath. Your viewers deserve better than tabloid garbage masquerading as journalism. Tell me, George, when was the last time you actually researched method acting? When did you sit down with mental health professionals who could explain the therapeutic benefits of diving into difficult emotions in a controlled environment? The audience shifted uncomfortably. George leaned forward, his smile tightening. Tom, I think you're being defensive here. Hardy's head tilted slightly, his tone turning razor-edged. Defensive? George, I came here at 5 in the morning to talk about a film I'm passionate about, and instead, you're trying to score a cheap gotcha moment with out-of-context quotes. That's not defensive. That's called having standards. George cleared his throat, attempting to steer the conversation back into safer waters. Well, the quotes speak for themselves, Hardy pounced, his voice rising with disbelief. Do they? Because I'd love to hear which quotes you're referring to. Cite them for me, word for word. Come on, George, give me one specific example. The silence stretched on like an eternity. George glanced nervously at his notes, flipping pages, but nothing came. His hesitation was broadcast live, raw, and humiliating. Well, he stammered, there have been several interviews where you've discussed your preparation methods. Several interviews, Hardy repeated slowly, every syllable dripping with scorn. But you can't quote a single one specifically, can you? You can't tell me the journalist, the publication, or even the words I supposedly said. Not one. George's face flushed. Tom, I think we're getting off track here. No, George, Hardy shot back instantly. We're finally on track. You accused me of being irresponsible, of influencing young actors dangerously, and now you can't even back up your accusation. That's not journalism. That's character assassination based on hearsay. The camera cut to George, who was visibly sweating, his professional mask beginning to slip. The crew behind the cameras exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they should keep rolling or cut to commercial. I have the information right here in my notes, George muttered, fumbling desperately through his papers. Then read it, Hardy barked. Read me the exact words that supposedly prove your point. George's hands shook as he tried to shuffle through the stack. The specific quote isn't as important as the overall pattern of statements. Hardy's voice rose for the first time, sharp enough to slice through the air. The specific quote isn't important? George, you've spent 5 minutes dragging my name through the mud in front of millions, and now you're telling me the actual words don't matter? That's outrageous. That's not what I'm saying, George replied quickly, panic in his eyes. Then what are you saying? Hardy demanded, leaning forward, his presence overwhelming. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you lured me here under false pretenses, ambushed me, and now you're choking because you can't back up your accusations. The studio was dead silent, not even a cough from the audience. The tension was suffocating. George tried again, voice cracking slightly. Tom, let's talk about your new film. The character you play, but Hardy cut him off cold. No, George, we're not done here. You just accused me of being a danger to young actors without evidence, and you owe your viewers an explanation. You owe me an explanation. I think we should move on, George pleaded, his composure all but gone. I think you should answer the question, Hardy snapped. You said advocates were concerned about me. Name one, just one. Give me a name. George shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his hands trembling slightly on the desk. Tom, there have been several articles. Several articles? Hardy roared. So no names, no quotes, no actual evidence. Just vague claims that could have been written by anyone, anywhere. Do you realize what you're doing right now, George? You're smearing my reputation with smoke and mirrors. George fumbled, looking down at his notes again, then glancing desperately toward the cameras. These concerns have been raised in various outlets. Various outlets, Hardy cut in, his voice thundering. George, do you hear yourself? You sound like a politician dodging a scandal. Sources say people are concerned. It's been reported. These are weasel words, mate. This is how people talk when they're making things up. The audience erupted into scattered gasps, the energy in the studio more electric than ever. George's smile was gone now, replaced by a pinched expression of pure discomfort. He was losing, badly, and everyone watching knew it. George was crumbling now, his voice shaking, his once confident presence evaporating under the heat of Hardy's relentless precision. Tom, I think our viewers would prefer to hear about your new film. Hardy leaned forward, his stare unblinking, his tone deadly calm. Your viewers deserve better than this weak deflection, George. They deserve hosts who do their research, who can back up their claims with facts instead of vague rumors and anonymous sources. What you're doing here isn't journalism. It's gossip dressed up for morning TV. George swallowed hard, his face turning a shade redder with every passing second. You're being very aggressive here, Tom. I'm being precise, Hardy shot back. There's a massive difference. You accused me of damaging young actors without a shred of evidence, and now you want me to sit quietly while you hide behind excuses? That's not happening. The cameras captured every bead of sweat on George's forehead, every nervous twitch of his hands as he shuffled the useless notes in front of him. The studio audience looked frozen in their seats, wide-eyed, caught between shock and fascination. Tom, George tried again, his voice almost trembling. Let's try to keep this civil. Civil? Hardy let out a bitter laugh that echoed across the set. There's nothing civil about ambushing a guest with false accusations. There's nothing civil about hiding behind vague articles you can't even quote. And there's nothing civil about attempting to ruin someone's professional reputation just to create a viral clip for your show. George's polished TV persona was gone now. His face was strained, his voice defensive, his energy desperate. Tom, that's not what this is about. Then tell us what it is about, Hardy snapped. Explain it to me. Explain it to your audience. Explain why you dragged me here under false pretenses. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like entrapment, and the only thing you've exposed today is your own incompetence. The studio gasped as Hardy's words landed like punches. George's lips parted as if to respond, but no words came out. For a moment, the mighty news anchor looked completely powerless. And then, in a move that made jaws drop across America, George looked off camera and muttered, "Security." The word hit like a thunderclap. The audience gasped audibly, the crew jolted, and Hardy's face twisted into disbelief. "Security," he repeated, rising slightly in his chair. "You're calling security on me for asking you to back up your own accusations with facts? This is outrageous." Two security guards moved hesitantly onto the stage, clearly unsure of what to do. Hardy remained calm, towering in his presence but speaking clearly, his words slicing through the chaos. This is what modern journalism has become, folks. When they're exposed, when they're called out for spreading gossip instead of facts, they don't apologize. They call security. "Tom, you need to calm down," one of the guards said quietly. "Calm down?" Hardy laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've been calm this entire time. I've sat here in my chair, speaking in complete sentences, demanding accountability. What exactly do I need to calm down from? Asking for basic honesty?" The guards glanced at George, who gave them a frantic nod. "Remove him," George ordered, his voice cracking. Hardy stood up slowly, deliberately, his every movement radiating controlled fury. He looked directly into the camera, ignoring George completely. "Remember this moment. Remember what you just witnessed. I came here to talk about my work, and instead, I was ambushed with lies. And when I asked for facts, I was threatened with removal. That's not journalism. That's censorship in real time." The audience erupted, some gasping, some applauding, others frozen in disbelief. Hardy walked off the set under his own power, refusing to be touched by security, his shoulders squared, his eyes burning. The studio was left in stunned silence as Stephanopoulos sat at the desk, pale and shaken, fumbling his papers with trembling hands. The feed cut awkwardly to commercial, but the damage was already done. The clip would spread across social media within hours, with millions taking sides in the Hardy versus Stephanopoulos showdown. Some would call Hardy a hero for demanding accountability, while others would brand him out of control. But one thing was undeniable. Television history had been made, and the fallout would be impossible to ignore. So what do you think? Was Tom Hardy justified in tearing down a morning host live on air, or did George Stephanopoulos have every right to push him on tough questions? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more breakdowns of the explosive moments Hollywood would rather you forget. That was one of the wildest live TV clashes we've ever seen. Comment your thoughts below. Was Tom Hardy right to call out George Stephanopoulos, or did the host push too far? Don't forget to hit that like button, smash subscribe, and stay tuned for more explosive
Breakdowns coming your way!